Welcome back. In today's video, we will discuss the steps needed to create a project, which is called the workflow. I wanted to do this before we got into the text animation project, just so you could see the steps that we'll go through and give you a foundation for that. So, the workflow is a series of steps to logically work through creating a finished project, a model, animation, whatever it is you're creating. The steps that we'll cover are more of a suggestion, and they're not a hard rule. You don't always do your projects in this order, but typically each step you will do in some form or fashion. You might jump back and forth, but these things usually happen, and it's important to kind of understand their purpose and their place in the process. And these should be fluid. Like I said, you might not always do every step. You might not do the animation step, which we'll talk about. But keep in mind, like I said, they're not a hard rule. You don't always have to do it step by step this way. These steps are modeling, creating the shape or form of the object or objects needed for the scene. Now, I'm going to demonstrate a few things. You don't have to do these. I just want to show you a few things. So for example, I have a scene and I'm going to delete the cube and add a new object, this little monkey's head. Now, I'm sure you're asking, why can you randomly add a monkey's head in Blender? It's kind of a long story in the history of Blender and the people who made it, but the simple answer, this is a complex object that can be used for testing materials and testing lighting, so it's a quick way to have something that has some shape and form to it. So typically you would work really hard to make a model, but this allows me to cheat a little bit, and now I have this really cool model, and I'm going to make a few changes so it looks a little more smooth and nice. Now, you don't know how I did that, we'll learn that later, but for the sake of this video, I have worked really hard and now I have a model. So I have completed step one. I have made the shape of the thing that I want to create. Second is lighting. So you have to have lights in your scene. Now you may be thinking, we have lights. There are light parts and dark parts on our model. But these are the general lighting setup. And we want something where we have some control. So I'm going to make a few changes. And now we have some lighting, and for example, I want to move my light so that now I have different light on my monkey's head. So now I have completed the lighting stage. I have some lights. Third, we're going to add a material to our object. And materials help the computer understand if your object is metal or plastic or glass. It's the computer's way of understanding, should light bounce off, should light be absorbed, should it be reflective, should it be kind of smooth, rough. All those type of things are what you do when you change the material. So for example, I will change the monkey's material. So right now we'll give it just a simple color. Let's do more of a blue color. And I can make it look more metallic. Oop, hang on just a second. There we go. I can make that metal really smooth, so you have reflections. I can make it a bit rougher, so that way it's not quite as glossy looking. So step 4 is a little different than material. They seem very similar. Material is how light bounces off, reflects. The texture is actually the colors or patterns on that. So for example, I'm going to open a different editor. Don't worry about this right now. And I can give this a different texture. For example, we'll make it look like it's a checkerboard. So now our monkey has a different texture. So let's say that for whatever reason, that's what I wanted, and now I've completed the material stage. It looks like metal, and the texture stage, it looks like a checkerboard. Then we move on to the next step, which is placing our camera, because while we're working, we're just moving around randomly. But we need to tell the camera what part of our scene are we actually looking at for the finished video. So our camera is here, and I'm going to look at what the camera is looking at. So my finished product might look like this, but I would prefer to see it from this angle. So I would move my camera to this position, and now my final product would look like that. I could also animate something in my scene. This step is optional. If you're not animating, you wouldn't do this step. So let's say that I want the monkey's head to spin around. Let me make a quick change. Here we go. And let's say that I want his head just to spin around as our animation plays. So I would do a few things to make that happen. Let me change something real fast. There we go. And then if I play the animation, my monkey's head will spin around. And that will be step number 6. Last is the process of telling the computer to take what we've created and change that into a picture, like a JPEG or a PNG, some kind of picture that you could post on the internet, put on Facebook, email to someone, or to create an animation that could be uploaded on YouTube, once again, emailed. So the computer will look at our model, the lighting, the materials, the textures, and it will take all that information and it will create our finished product. Now for rendering, I'm not going to do that live here on screen because that will take a few minutes, but I will pause the video and then I'll restart once I have this rendered. My video has now finished rendering, and I will play that here in Blender's video editor. And now you can see our finished product. I have an animation of the monkey's head spinning around with its metallic texture and metallic material and checkerboard texture. Now, there are more steps that can be added, like simulating physics. Let me pause this. Cloth simulations, particle simulations, fluid simulations, all kinds of things. Those are other steps, but these from this video are the basic steps that you'll typically work through for most projects, and the other steps are kind of specialized for specific tasks. In our next video, we will actually start our first project, creating the text animation. And this video coming up will focus on modeling the text that we'll have in our scene. Thanks for watching, and check out the next video.